And now we come to another one of my favorite games, released in 1993 for both the Genesis and Super Nintendo. It's Zombies Ate My Neighbors. You can play as either Zeke or Julie, as you fight off monsters in levels inspired by classic horror and B-movies. From Return of the Living Dead, Child's Play, Dawn of the Dead, classic Hammer movies, and even more modern classics like Tremors. First, let's take a look at it on Genesis. This is how I played it originally. And I used to swear by that this was the better version, even though the screen is smaller and squished, with a permanent radar map on the screen, even though the graphics were slightly worse, and even though instead of having designated buttons to change the weapons or items, having to cumbersomely hold down A while pressing B or C to change weapons and items. But only because the Game Over screen had red blood instead of the Super Nintendo's purple slime. And even though it's probably just from a color limitation on the Genesis, I like the barrels at the first level have a toxic green waste looking substance in it, as opposed to the Super Nintendo's blue water. Another difference between the versions is there is only one monster sprite that Zeke or Julie transform into. On the Super Nintendo version, each monster would be wearing Julie's cap or Zeke's 3D glasses. But on Genesis, it's just a single monster sprite that is shared between them. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is both fun and challenging, but can become somewhat impossible if you use the password system. One of the main mechanics of the game is weapon and item collecting and management. You have to decide on what weapons to use on each monster. Some, like the blobs, need to be frozen using a fire extinguisher. The werewolves are weak to silverware, and giant ants can be destroyed with the Martian bubble gun that only momentarily traps every other enemy. Bazookas can be used to blast through doors or walls, saving the use of a key, or can be used to make your own path in hedge mazes. So collecting up a lot of weapons is important, especially when having to face bosses. But if you use a password, you start that level with only the basic squirt gun, and sometimes you just cannot collect enough weapons from the level the password starts you on until you reach a hard boss. Meaning most of the time, you'll have to play from the start, trying to save as many weapons as possible for the bosses. Other than that, this game is perfect in my opinion. It's really fun completing levels and seeing what kind of horror movie scenario the next one contains. For the atmosphere, it gets a perfect 3. From graveyards to castles to pyramids, and with enemies like evil dolls, chainsaw-wielding maniacs, Frankensteins, Draculas, werewolves, and zombies, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is absolutely steeped in classic spooky vibes. Gameplay, again, it's a perfect score with another 3. Running around blasting monsters is always fun. But the neighbor mechanic is what sets this game apart. Losing a neighbor is permanent, so if one dies in a level, the next level will only spawn how many you have saved, making the levels both easier and more difficult. Having less neighbors to save before the exit spawns may make levels faster to get through, but you better save them as quick as you can, because if all neighbors die, you get a game over, same as losing all lives. Now let's talk about the official sequel, Ghoul Patrol, released just for the Super Nintendo in 1994. This game sees the return of Zeke and Julie. This time, they're fighting ghosts and demons after accidentally releasing them from a museum display. The game plays overall way worse than the original, even though the concept is identical. Save victims, collect weapons, and blast monsters. It feels way more clunky than its predecessor. There is an added jump and slide feature that add nothing interesting, and the radar map has been replaced with victims yelling at you with speech bubbles indicating the direction they are in. The enemies are way worse this time too. Gone are the classic monsters and movie references, instead replaced with possessed copiers, file cabinets, and I don't know, snail monsters? The only thing that seems to be cooler than the first is a potion that instead of a generic beast monster turns you into death itself. Overall, a downgrade from the first, making it have an atmosphere of 1 and a gameplay of 1.5. But don't worry, if you want a proper sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors, look no further to the mini ROM hacks, starting with the one that got me into playing the honestly smoother to play Super Nintendo version, Bloody Disgustin' Edition. The only thing that this hack does is replace the purple Game Over with the true bloody red, fixing the one issue I had that really kept me from preferring the Super Nintendo version. Now, I'm just going to run through some various ROM hacks because there are a lot of them. Zombies ate my crazy neighbors. The monsters spawn closer to the victims, so you gotta be fast, but just more levels for a great game. Brutal Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Difficulty cranked up. Monsters spawn right beside the victims, and you only start with a football. Elite Zombies Ate My Neighbors. There is literally no way to get out of the first level that you spawn into, unless you might could get a random boss key spawn from the trash can, but you'd have to restart it countless times. I like that the barrels have red waste in it though. Impossible Zombies Ate My Neighbors? A nice challenging upgrade from the original. Tons of different monsters right from level 1, but the places the monsters spawn seem to be more fair than they are in Brutal. Look and find Zombies Ate My Neighbors. A different kind of hack. Instead of being able to just rescue all the neighbors and continue on to the next level, you first must explore and find an exclamation point icon, letting you then continue. Lots of really cool, unique locations. The Arctic, and the cityscape on top of a skyscraper. Tons of stuff to collect, and a slower, more casual pace. Oh no, more Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It feels like a proper sequel, or just more levels to explore from the original. You start off with the cans, but you can quickly find a squirt gun. Ultimate Zombies Ate My Neighbors. More levels and more fun. It keeps the difficulty of the later stages of the original. Very Ultimate Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It's just like Ultimate, but with some new levels. Zombies Ate My Neighbors Orange Juice. You start off with a bazooka and fight tons of toxic mushrooms. Small Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Tiny level concept. You have to fight snakeoids early on with limited ammo. There are 3 different small version ROM hacks. Zombies Ate My Neighbors the sequel. An unofficial sequel with the main villain Dr. Tongue returning as a talking skull. Zombies Ate My Neighbors The Lost Levels. Harder than the original game, tons of enemies right from the first level. Zombies seem a little more ruthless, constantly chasing the player. Painful World of Spikes. Tons of hazards on the ground, requiring the weed whacker to navigate, and relentless monsters, for hardcore fans who want more of a challenge than all the other harder hacks. Zombies Ate My Neighbors Out-of-World Experience. There was supposed to be a custom soundtrack using tracks from other games, but I couldn't get it to work, so it's silent, but maybe you can have better luck with the patch. Some that I didn't get footage of: Zombies Ate My Neighbors 101, Doomsday, Doomsday 2, Dr. Tongue's Revenge, Skies, and a hack with a save feature. So there are so many levels now. With all the hacks, you could play Zombies Ate My Neighbors probably all year long and never see every level. Playing any of these games, except for Ghoul Patrol, is a Halloween or spooky season must.